Before these things, Enoch was hidden, and no one of the children of men knew where he was hidden, and where he abode, and what had become of him. And his activities had to do with the watchers, and his days were with the holy ones.
Greetings, friends. Welcome back to the broadcast. I'm Sean, your host. Website is www.scriptureandprophecy.com. That's where you go to find the archives, and that's where you go to support this mission of truth and this mission to deliver the word to as many people as possible. And I appreciate your support and your prayers, and thanks for tuning in today. We are resuming our study in the ancient book of Enoch, and we're going to be reading chapter 11 through 14 today, and the first two verses are just a continuation of the prophecy from last week, and then it gets into this story where Enoch is sent to the watchers to give them some very bad news, which is that there will be no forgiveness for this great sin that they've committed, and they will be eternally judged and eternally not allowed into the kingdom of heaven. And, this issue is actually spoken of by Peter in 2 Peter. So let's just read that real quick. 2 Peter chapter 2, verses 4 through 5, he says, if God spared not the angels who sinned, but cast them down to hell, and delivered them into chains of darkness to be reserved unto judgment, and spared not the old world, but saved Noah, the eighth person, a preacher of righteousness, bringing in the flood upon the world of the ungodly. And you see, Peter is qualifying. He's saying that he's talking specifically about the angels that sinned, and he qualifies the time frame that he's talking about, which was the time of the flood. It's very clear what Peter is addressing here. And so that's kind of what's going to go on in the chapters that we're going to be reading today. We're going to get through 14. 15 also is dealing with this issue, but we won't, 15 and 16, but we won't get to that till next week. So anyway, without further rambling and further delay, the stage is set. Let's jump in. And just again, a reminder, the first two verses that I read are just a continuation of the prophecy from last week. And here's what it says, chapter 11. And in those days I will open the stone chambers of blessing which are in heaven, so as to send them down upon the earth over the work and labor of the children of men. And truth and peace shall be associated together throughout all the days of the world and throughout all the generations of men. Before these things, Enoch was hidden, and no one of the children of men knew where he was hidden, and where he abode, and what had become of him. And his activities had to do with the watchers, and his days were with the holy ones. And I, Enoch, was blessing the Lord of majesty and the King of the ages, and lo, the watchers called me, Enoch the scribe, and said to me, Enoch, thou scribe of righteousness, go declare to the watchers of heaven, who have left the high heaven, the holy eternal place, and have defiled themselves with women, and have done as the children of the earth do, and have taken unto themselves wives. Ye have wrought great destruction on the earth, and ye shall have no peace nor forgiveness of sin, and as inmuch as they delight themselves in their children, the murder of their beloved ones shall they see, and over the destruction of their children shall they lament, and shall make supplication unto eternity. But mercy and peace shall ye not attain. All right, before I move on, let's just get clear about what we're talking about here. Enoch, who's being called a scribe, Enoch the scribe, there is urban legends, as you would call them, that suggest that Enoch was the first one to write things, and that a lot of these books made their way onto the boat with Noah. But, do with that what you will. Again, just legend has it. But he's being told to go to the Watchers and tell to them that this thing that they did, where they defiled themselves with the women and they bore themselves children, they're going to be severely judged for this. And not only will they not receive forgiveness for this sin, but the children that they've had, these giants, we call them Nephilim, they will also be destroyed, and there'll be no peace and no mercy shall be obtained for them. Let's continue, chapter 13, verse 1. And Enoch went and said, Azazel, thou shalt have no peace. A severe sentence has gone forth against thee, to put thee in bonds. And thou shalt not have toleration nor request granted to thee, because of the unrighteousness which thou hast taught, and because of all the works of godlessness and unrighteousness and sin which thou hast shown to men. Then I went and spoke to them all together, and they were all afraid, and fear and trembling seized them. And he besought me to draw up a petition for them, that they might find forgiveness, and to read their petition in the presence of the Lord of heaven. For from thenceforward they could not speak with him, nor lift up their eyes to heaven for shame of their sins which they had been condemned. Then I wrote out their petition, and the prayer in regard to the spirits and their deeds individually, and in regards to their request that they should have forgiveness in length of days. And I went off and I sat down in the waters of Dan, in the land of Dan, to the south of the west of Hermon. I read their petition till I fell asleep. And behold, a dream came to me, and visions fell down upon me, and I saw visions of chastisement. And a voice came bidding me, to tell it to the sons of heaven, and to reprimand them. And when I awakened, I came unto them, and they were all sitting gathered together, weeping, in Abel-Jael, which is between Lebanon and Sincere, with their faces covered. And I recounted before them all the vision which I had seen in sleep, and I began to speak the words of righteousness, and to reprimand the heavenly watchers. The book of the words of righteousness, and of the reprimand of the eternal watchers, in accordance with the command of the Holy Great One in that vision. I saw in my sleep that I will now say with a tongue of flesh, and with a breath of my mouth, which the Great One has given to me to converse therewith and understand with the heart. As he has created and given to man the power of understanding and the word of wisdom, so hath he created me also, and given me the power of reprimanding the watchers, the children of heaven. I wrote out your petition, and in my vision it appeared thus, that your petitions will not be granted unto you throughout all the days of eternity, and that judgment has been finally passed upon you. Yea, your petition will not be granted unto you. And from henceforth you shall not ascend into heaven unto all eternity, and in bonds of the earth the decree has gone forth to bind you for all the days of the world. And that previously you should have seen the destruction of your beloved sons, and you shall have no pleasure in them, but they shall fall before you by sword. And your petition on their behalf shall not be granted, nor yet on your own, even though you weep and pray and speak with all words contained in the writing which I have written. And the vision was shown to me thus, behold, in the vision clouds invited me, a mist summoned me, and the course of the stars and the lightning sped and hastened me. And the winds of the vision caused me to fly, and lifted me upward, and bore me into heaven. And I went in till I drew nigh to the wall, which is built of crystals and surrounded by tongues of fire, and it began to affright me. And I went into the tongues of fire and drew nigh to a large house which was built of crystals, and the walls of the house were like a tessellated floor made of crystals, and its groundwork was crystals. Its ceiling was like a path of stars, and the lightnings between them were fiery cherubim, and their heaven was clear as water. A flaming fire surrounded the walls, and its portals blazed with fire. And I entered into that house, and it was hot as fire and cold as ice, and there was no delights of life therein. Fear covered me, and trembling got a hold upon me. And as I quaked and trembled, I fell on my face, and I beheld a vision, and lo, there was a second house greater than the former, and the entire portal stood open before me. And it was built of flames of fire, and in every respect it so excelled in splendor and magnificence, an extent that I cannot describe to you, its splendor and its extent. And its floor was of fire, and above it were lightnings in the path of stars, and its ceilings also was flaming fire. And I looked, and I saw therein a lofty throne. Its appearance was as crystal, and the wheels thereof as the shining sun. There was the vision of cherubim. And from underneath the throne came streams of flaming fire, so that I could not look thereon. And the great glory sat thereon, and his raiment shone more brightly than the sun, and was whiter than any snow. None of the angels could enter, and could behold his face by reason of the magnificence and glory, and no flesh could behold him. The flaming fire was round about him, and the great fire stood before him, and none around could draw nigh him. 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him, yet he needed no counselor. And the most holy ones who were nigh to him did not leave by night nor depart from him. And until then I had been prostrate on my face, trembling. And the Lord called me with his own mouth, and he said to me, Come hither, Enoch, and hear my word. And none of the holy ones came to me and waked me. And he made me rise up and approach the door, and I bowed my face downwards. And he answered, and he said to me, and I heard his voice, Fear not, Enoch. Thou righteous man and scribe of righteousness, approach hither and hear my voice. And go and say to the watchers of heaven, who have sent thee to intercede for them, You should intercede for men, and not men for you. Wherefore have ye left the high, holy, and eternal heaven, and lain with women, and defiled yourselves with the daughters of men, and taken to yourselves wives, and done like the children of earth, and begotten giants as your sons? And though you are holy, spiritual, living in the eternal life, you have defiled yourselves with the blood of women, and have begotten children with the blood of flesh. And as the children of men have lusted after flesh and blood, and those also do who die and perish. Therefore have I given them wives also, that they might impregnate them, and beget children by them, that thus nothing might be wanting to them on earth. But you were formerly spiritual, living the eternal life, and immortal for all generations of the world. And therefore I have not appointed wives for you. For as for the spiritual ones of heaven, in heaven is their dwelling. And now the giants who produced from the spirits of flesh shall be called evil spirits upon the earth, and on the earth shall be their dwelling. Evil spirits have proceeded from their bodies, because they were born from men and from the holy watchers, is their beginning and primal origin. They shall be evil spirits on earth, and evil spirits shall they be called. As for the spirits of heaven, in heaven shall be their dwelling. But as for the spirits of earth, which were born upon the earth, and those earths shall be their dwelling. And the spirits of the giants afflict, oppress, destroy, attack, do battle, and work destruction on the earth, and cause trouble. They take no food, but themselves hunger and thirst, and cause offenses. And these spirits shall rise up against the children of men and against the women, because they have produced from them. From the days of the slaughter, of destruction and death of the giants, from the soils of whose flesh the spirits having gone forth shall destroy without incurring judgment. Thus shall they destroy until the day of consummation, the great judgment in which the age shall be consummated. Over the watchers and the godless, yea, shall be wholly consummated. And now, as to the watchers who have sent thee to intercede for them who had been aforetime in heaven, you say to them, you have been in heaven, but all the mysteries had not yet been revealed to you, and you knew worthless ones. And in the hardness of your hearts you have made known to the women. And through these mysteries women and men work much evil on the earth. Say to them, therefore, ye have no peace. And that is our study for this morning. And I went ahead and read chapter 15 and 16, okay, because it just flowed together and I didn't want to have to try to recap it next week. But let's just talk a little bit about what happened. So the watchers send Enoch to God to intercede on their behalf. So they write out this petition, and he goes and he reads it, and he falls asleep, and he has this vision given to him by God, and he sees this throne room and all this stuff, and God speaks to Enoch and says, you know what, the watchers are permanently judged. They're not going to have access to heaven anymore. They're going to be chained in the earth till the end of time, which we just read out of Peter, that same outcome, right? In 2 Peter chapter 2, verses 4 through 5. He says the watchers should have been interceding for man, right? Like these were angels and dwelling in heaven, and they had eternal holiness and eternal, living. They should be interceding for men, not men interceding on behalf of them. So their punishment, there'll be no forgiveness. Not only that, their children are going to die, and then it says their children will be the evil spirits of the earth. So according to Enoch, this is where demons come from. Demons, according to the book of Enoch, which we just read, are the disembodied spirits of the Nephilim, right? Because they don't ascend into heaven or anything like that, so they're wandering the earth. So these demons that torment men, and have been since the times of Noah, up until even right now, are the disembodied spirits of the Nephilim. That's where they came from. It wasn't like God created these evil demons and they to torment men. It was also as a result of this great fall that took place during the time of Jared, during the time of Noah. And so that's where the demonic spirits come from. People tend to confuse, and they think demons are fallen angels, but that's not the case. Demons are the disembodied spirits of the Nephilim, which were the children of the watchers, or fallen angels, whatever you want to call them. But fallen angels themselves are not Nephilim, and they are not demons. They're fallen angels. But we get all these things confused, and I hear pastors kind of just lumping it all into one thing, but that's not what the ancient scriptures teach. And the Bible doesn't teach that either. Nowhere in the Bible does it teach that. But this is where we get that information, the book of Enoch. And again, we see Jude quoting some of these, quoting from the book of Enoch. We see Peter plainly saying the exact same thing, talking about what we just read here. It talked about the throne area. Let me get back to it here, which we also see in the book of Revelation when he's talking about how the white as snow. He says, and the great glory one sat on his throne thereon, and his raiment shone more brightly than the sun, and it was whiter than snow. If we go to Revelation chapter 4, verse 6, it says, and before the throne was a sea of glass like unto crystal, which exactly like what we just read about. In the midst of the throne, round about the throne, were four beasts full of eyes, and before and behind. So same description. And in Daniel chapter 7, verse 9, it says, I behold, till the thrones were cast down, and the Ancient of Days did sit, whose garment was white as snow. Right? Same description. And the hair of his head was like the pure wool, and his throne was like the fiery flame, and his wheels as burning fire. Okay, so exact same descriptions. And so what I do here, and what I'm pointing out is, we're reading from the book of Enoch, and then I'm going to the Bible, which is our official authority, right? The Bible canon is our authority for all doctrine and understanding about these things. And we're seeing how it's not contradicting. The contrary, it's actually confirming the things that we're reading. So there you have it. And I hope you've been blessed this morning. I hope you enjoyed it this morning. And if you've never read the book of Enoch, then this is like a real eye-opener. And it really filling in some potential gaps for you. But let's remember that we treat it like a historical narrative. We don't treat it the same way we treat our Bible canon. We don't try to form biblical doctrines and things like that from it. But anyway, I'm out of time this morning. I pray you've been blessed. Hey, we could use Patreon subscribers. We've lost actually a lot of Patreon subscribers this year. So please consider becoming a Patreon subscriber to support the podcast. You can go to patreon.com/truthfed, or you can use the donation links and things like that at scriptureandprophecy.com or in the description on YouTube. This broadcast is 100% listener supported. And so I appreciate your prayers and your support. Peace and grace be with all of you. Have a blessed weekend, and until next time, God bless.